Welcome, readers. Today on Book Chat, joining me are my three book bloggers, one series read-along co-host, Casey and Nicola. We're discussing Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. Plus, we're talking about the Amazon miniseries adaptation. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Tamara Ford, and welcome to Book Chat here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast. Join in this book discussion by finding me on Twitter, as well as my book blogger co-host. Tweet at us using our special hashtag, 3bloggers1series. That's using the numeric 3 and 1. Again, that's hashtag 3bloggers1series. If Twitter isn't your thing, no worries, you can join us on the Facebook group, Shelf Addiction Official, and talk about the book with us there, as well as other bookish topics. I hope to hear your thoughts on this discussion. The links for everything I've mentioned are below in the show notes. Before we get started, I have to issue a spoiler warning. This is a roundtable book discussion, so nothing is off limits. You've been warned. Hey guys, welcome back. We have a really fun episode for you. I know you're used to us doing series, but we have a one-off book today, and we are going to be talking about Good Omens, both the book and the TV show. And as always, I have my two book blogger friends and co-host, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves because we've got a lot to get going on and talking about. So Nicola, you first.
Hey everybody, I'm Nicola. I blog over at alphaheroes.net and sometimes guest in other places, but I'm happy to be here today with you guys.
Hey everyone, I'm Casey. I've been book reviewing over at Literary Escapism for quite a few years before I started my own freelance editing business, Heart Full of Ink, and I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm glad you guys are here. We're going to delve into all things Good Omens. Let's start with the book. Who would like to give a general synopsis of the book? Anyone volunteer to do that? Not me, please, Lord.
I'll give it a shot since I'm the one that recommended this. I had read the book when it came out in the 90s, I think, and I really loved it. I thought it was hilarious. The humor in it just really clicked with me. I was used to a little bit of the understated British humor because I was a big fan of Douglas Adams. So I'm the one that convinced the crew to go ahead with this crazy plan. So in the book, bear in mind it's a little dated. It came out sort of before the internet and before cell phones, really. And what you have is an overview of human history in a biblical kind of context. So it kind of hand waves away archaeology, paleontology, and it goes with a more biblical explanation, but with kind of a funny twist, right? So you have an angel on earth who's Aziraphale, and you have a demon on earth who's starts out as Crawley, which is a play on the fact that he started out as the snake in the Garden of Eden that tempted Eve, and eventually he changes it to Crowley because he doesn't like the connotation as much, and it's just kind of an inside running joke the whole time. So these two realize that they kind of cancel each other out over the centuries and the millennia, and they become this odd sort of they have this odd sort of friendship, and you get a little taste of what happened historically, but it really gets started when the Antichrist is born, and there's a kind of a farcical baby swap that goes all wrong, and they're supposed to be watching over the Antichrist to try to, prevent the end of the world, but they're watching over the wrong kid. Long story short, so the Antichrist grows up kind of in a normal British family with friends in a normal neighborhood and normal parents, and without really influence from either side. So a lot of crazy things happen when we get to the apocalypse. There's a running sideline with a character that is supposed to be a witch finder, and his apprentice, and a family that has had this book of prophecies for the whole time, and they're trying. She kind of knows what's going to happen, but they don't really, like all prophecies, they don't quite get it until after it happens. So, am I rambling now, Tamara? Should I stop?
Yeah, let's dive in. She gave a really good synopsis. Thank you, Nicola. That was really
very good.
But I think the thing that I want to start with is the whole comedy thing. Like you mentioned, it was supposed to be comedic. Everywhere I looked, I saw comedy. I was expecting to be like, ah, ha, ha, yeah, that's so funny. And instead I'm like, okay. I got no comedy, none. Like every once in a while I might be like, oh, that's ironic, or go figure. But like literally, I don't think not one chuckle came out of my mouth when I was listening to this audiobook.
You didn't chuckle when Death was winning all the trivia questions at the bar?
No. I was like, oh, he won. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's just not, maybe it's not my type of humor.
Yeah, humor is really, really subjective. And there's a lot of books out there that people rave about how funny they are, and I just can't get into them. So I totally get where you're coming from. Yeah,
and I mean, not for nothing, I don't even really watch a lot of humorous TV shows. Like, I'm all about the drama. Bring me the drama all day, every day. I'm not watching 30-minute sitcoms. I will once in a while when my significant other wants to watch it, but that's not what I gravitate towards. So when I first said okay to this, I didn't realize it was supposed to be funny until I started looking. And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I like British stuff. I love Downton Abbey, right? I watch a bunch of British TV. So I'm thinking, oh, it'll be fine. But I just didn't. I mean, I didn't hate it. I just didn't find it funny at all. So that's my first inkling to say. Casey, do you have any initial thoughts on the book?
So, two things. First, I love British humor. I grew up watching Monty Python. I'm much younger than both of you. But I grew up watching Monty Python because my parents were just like, yeah, you're 5, whatever. You can watch this. We don't care. So I get British humor. But like you, Tamara, I barely laughed at all in this book. I was like, oh, this is a joke, but I'm not laughing. Or, oh, this is kind of funny. There's one line about the Kraken and like sushi reclaiming their victory or whatever. And I kind of chuckled over that, but that was basically it. So I didn't find it funny either, even though I usually like British humor. This one was just too dry for me.
Mm-hmm.
But my problem with this book, it's my kryptonite. It took me 2 weeks to read like 30% of this book because every time I would pick it up, I would read a page and fall asleep.
Oh, no.
And so it took me 2 weeks to read, you know, what In the Beginning and 11 years ago, like those 2 sections took me 2 weeks to read because every time I picked it up, I would fall asleep. I tried reading it on a plane. I'd try reading it outside. It didn't matter where I was. I would just fall asleep.
This is from a woman who can finish a book in like 4 hours most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Reading is my work. Reading is fun. I read all day. I can binge a series and like stay up till 6 a.m. reading. But for whatever reason, this book, I would read a page and just fall asleep.
Yeah. And I had the same problem, but not with sleeping. But I listened to this on audiobook because someone else recommended the audiobook, okay? They said the audiobook is spectacular. You must do it. It was narrated by Martin Jarvis. So I'm like, okay, I'm about the audiobook. And it has like this music in the beginning. It's kind of a little bit dramatized. I'm like, oh, okay, this could be good. And then it starts. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why is this taking so long? And it took me so long to get to like 30%. I just kept stopping and I'm like, I'll do something else. I can't listen to this. And then it got to the point where I could only listen literally on my drive to and from work. I could not listen to this at my desk like I normally listen to audiobooks because it would turn into this droning. And I'd be like, what the hell just happened? So then I have to rewind it. So I stopped trying. I'm like, I just can only listen in the car when I'm doing nothing else but driving. So
oh no.
Yeah.
So I will say that it didn't do as much for me on the second reading, some 25, 30 years later. And I don't know why, because I really did like it the first time around. I think the book is a little bit dated, and I don't know if there was an updated version, but the one I got was not. So there was still a lot of references to, like the answering machines with the cassette tapes.
The answer phone.
Answer phone. Yeah. And which they kind of Americanized for the show. But even so, the level of technology was weird. It was a little bit weird to be reading it, and I would agree that for whatever reason the humor did not grab me as much this time as it did the first time. Now I will say that I did laugh. I did like, there's bits about any cassette tape. Okay, who has cassette tapes anymore? But any cassette tape that's left in a car for more than 2 weeks turns into a Queen tape. Which, when I read it, it was funny. It wasn't hilarious. I think it was hilarious the first time, but it was kind of funny the second time. Mm-hmm. The bit about how the ducks would recognize that the ducks in the pond knew that everybody around them was some kind of spy, and they had preferences for the Russian brown bread and, different things from different nationality operatives, I thought was funny. Just the names were very strange. So I wanted to bring that up at some point. We can talk about it. But I would agree that the humor did not hold up for me like it did on the contemporary reading when the book first came out. But it wasn't quite as much of a dud for me as it was for you guys.
So let me ask you this. So obviously with the audiobook, when you have an audio narrator, you kind of get some impressions based on their performance. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I knew in my mind that God was a man. The male narrator, it was narrating God as a man. And I'm like, okay, this is God narrating the story. I could tell that pretty quickly. But then, I know we're not quite to the TV show, but then God was a woman on the TV show. So I want to know from you guys reading it, did you happen to think that the narrator could have been a woman? Or did you just think it was a man?
I just assumed it was a man.
I guess I didn't read it as either. That omniscient viewpoint to me doesn't really have a gender. Mm. I smiled when it turned out to be a female voice. And when I saw the credits go by and I saw that it was Frances Dermott, I was really happy because I love her so much.
I think that was a good choice, honestly. I think it lightened things up. It elevated it a little bit because the audiobook was kind of, again, like, not that guy's a bad narrator. He's not, but it was just so many characters and so much narration and so many side notes and footnotes. I'm like, oh my God. I think that it might have been a little better if they had multiple narrators, maybe made it dramatized in that way where they had, 3 or 4 narrators. It might have helped it from the audiobook point of view anyway.
That makes sense.
I have a quick question/note. So I was reading the ebook and I would get the little asterisks at the end of a sentence indicating that there'd be a footnote, but I never got to see any of the footnotes. Like, they were not at the end of the page or the section or the chapter. They were just gone.
Yeah, I actually looked it up on Scribd, and I had the ebook because I was contemplating switching to the ebook. So on Scribd, when it had the asterisks, I was able to touch it, and it took me to the end where it was one page for each asterisk. So when each footnote had its own page. But then I got a headache really quickly because it wouldn't let me jump back. I'm like, why the hell won't it let me jump back? So then I'm like, okay, so now I have to scroll through or try to remember the page. It was a cluster. So I'm like, forget this. Because at least in the audiobook, he'll say, blah, 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 footnote, and he'll say the footnote. And then he'll continue.
That's nicer. Yeah. I was reading it off my library app, and I was like, I can't click it. I can't do anything. Scrolling around, I don't see any footnotes. And so I felt like I was missing some of the jokes that way. Like, again, I don't know what they are. May have made me laugh a bit more, but every time I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm missing something here.
Yeah, I bought the ebook from Amazon, and it didn't have footnotes either. So that was kind of a drag.
Mm. Yeah.
So it sounds like the scribed version would have been better for you guys. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
How theirs was, but it was a pain to go back. And I'm like, I tried it a couple different times, and I'm like, forget this. The audiobook is what I'm doing, because it's just too much of a headache, and it would have taken me even longer.
Yeah,
to go back and forth.
Honestly, I feel like you ought to buy it in print and read it. I think that's probably going to be the best experience.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about these characters a little bit. I did like Crawley, and I did like Aziraphale. Is that how you pronounce his name? Aziraphale? I don't know. Aziraphale? Okay. Lord, I'm like the names. But I like them and how they played off of each other. I thought that was kind of fun to read. Every time they came together, it was kind of comical. I get that. And they're kind of like polar opposites, but friends in a weird way. And I kind of like the dynamic between them. But outside of them, it was just a lot going on, like a lot of characters.
Far too many characters and side notes. Far too many.
There was a lot going on. That's true.
Like the whole baby swap thing. I had to rewind that and re-listen. I'm like, wait, how did they switch the babies? What happened?
That was really hard to follow.
Mm-hmm. And I hated how they just kept like randomly cutting into every scene with a different paragraph about a different person. And it didn't feel like a natural stopping point or a cutting point. It was just like here's a line. Here's a new character. Let's talk about them for 3 paragraphs. Let's go back to this other person. And then let's cut and jump all over the place. I was like, this is so confusing. I'm reading and flipping the pages back and forth going, who the fuck? What the fuck? Where are we? What baby's doing what?
I don't know. And I feel bad because so many people loved this book. But like Nicola, you mentioned that it didn't hold up this time around for you as much as it did the first time. So when looking at these ratings, I would love to know like how many people are like new readers of it and not from 1990
or rating.
Because I feel bad. Like I didn't love it. And I feel like I hate when I always go against the grain. Like 9 times out of 10, I'm always, it doesn't, that's always me. And I was like hoping this time it wouldn't just, but this time it's not just me. So I'm good.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what the other readers in the group think. And if you guys are listening in the chat right now, let's talk about if you guys liked it or not, because I want to know. Let's talk about that now. And what's your favorite character, actually? I would love to know that. Nicola, do you have a favorite character?
In the book, I might say it was Newt, the Witchfinder apprentice guy. I feel like he just had like a happy outcome. He was such a doofus, and he just got a happy ending. And as a romance reader, I'm kind of a sucker for that. So I enjoyed his journey. I also kind of liked in the book the ride of the 4 horsemen and the way they were kind of trailed by the bumbling motorcycle gang.
The other horsemen.
Yeah, that was fun.
I enjoyed that. I liked a lot of the jokes about what the 4 horsemen were doing on Earth, how the hunger or famine was, promoting all these diet programs that included no food at all, just things that were kind of very socially pointed. I enjoyed those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of them are still pretty accurate today, like about the famine with the diet food, or that's not diet food, or whatever it was called, chow or whatever.
Right,
chow.
There's no food involved.
Mm-hmm. Casey, did you have a character that you kind of liked out of the bunch?
So my favorite character was Pepper. She was Adam's only female friend in the group of them. Mm-hmm. I thought she was really kick-ass and cool, and everybody else could just wander off. I wanted to know more about her and how she beat up 3 boys when she was like 5, and then they all became best friends. And I was like, I want her story. She deserves to like fight and kick ass some more. But yeah, Newt was okay. I don't know. They were just like, he was cute, but also, I don't know. There's just something about him that I didn't like, and I can't put my finger on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the witch he hooked up with, I was like, okay, I kind of like you, but again, there's just something off about her. And I can't put it into words, because, yeah.
They were a lot more attractive in the TV show than I pictured them in the book.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And Aziraphale and Crowley, I loved their relationship and their friendship and the bromance and whatever else you want to call it. But, I don't know. There was just something about 90% of all the characters where I felt disconnected to them. And I don't think that any of them really had any sort of development. Like Adam obviously had his developmental moment and picked humanity, but nobody else really had any of that, which I know I'm being more editorial right now and nitpicking, but
no, that's true.
It's a book. You should have some sort of character development.
But there were just too many of them, and that's probably part of the problem.
Yeah.
We had a story that was small in window as far as present day, right? We're like 7 days to the end of time, but yet then we have to go back centuries to tell this story, like for perspective. And it's like just too much crammed in. So it's hard to fully develop, Newton or, I mean, hell, even if you want to know a little bit more about Madame Tracy, I mean, it's even the kids, it would be hard to, because there's just so much.
It's definitely not a character-driven story, right? It's
it's a plot-driven.
Yeah, it's
all about the plot.
It's slapstick. It's kind of I don't know, maybe like a butterfly effect or something, where you look at all these different things that happen that change the course of the outcome. I don't know. But yeah, none of the characters really changed from the beginning to the end. Possibly Shadwell, when he kind of got his happy ending too.
I mean, a little bit. He still sat there and called her Jezebel, but he was slightly nicer about it. He was like, all right, I'll sit at your table and insult you.
Yeah. He didn't mean it though,
No. But still, it was just that,
Yeah, that kind of stuff, the misogyny, there's a misogynistic thread that runs through it that kind of doesn't really hold up very well in today's climate, I think. And I think that was somewhat neutralized in the TV show, but it stuck out a few times. There's a few things that jumped out at me at the book, and I didn't make a note of them, but a few things were just kind of clinky for me about like,
Yeah, I had a few moments of that where I was like, this is kind of sexist and misogynistic and maybe borderline racist. And I know that's British humor, but...
Oh my God. Like talking about the jazz and what qualifies as jazz or something. I'm like, well, clearly the author felt a way about what music was appropriate. I mean, just saying. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, alrighty. If that's what you say, sir. Okay. That's kind of... And I just kept going, Next.
Yeah. There was one thing I wanted to talk about, though.
Yeah, what is it?
What did you guys think about the Kraken? And we can talk about both this in the movie or the show and the book, but the angels knew about the Kraken, so it wasn't part of Adam's imagination. And they kept talking about like, oh, at the end of the world, the Kraken will rise and boil all the oceans and, eat all the whales or whatever. And the Kraken comes up, but then they never talk about it. And I was like, there was a lot of build-up, and I mean a lot of, like, they mentioned it twice. There was a lot of build-up for just nothing. And then they just never
skimmed over that, I guess. It didn't really jump out at me one way or the other.
Same.
I was excited. I was like, oh, Kraken, that'll be cool. And then nothing happened. And I was like, oh.
I guess... As you guys said, it's kind of a chaotic story, so it was just sort of one more piece of the chaos to me. So I didn't think it was going to be something super significant. Turns out I was right.
I hoped.
Yeah, it was a little. It was a little disjointed and like meandering. You're kind of like over here, over there, over here, over there, back here, right now. It's kind of like, okay, that's what's kind of like, just sit down and just roll with it. I guess that's what I was trying to do, so that I wouldn't get. I think that did help me settle in a little more when I just said, well, once I was able to focus and I figured out what I needed to do to stay focused, I'm like, I'm just gonna roll with it. I'm not gonna think about it too hard, I guess. Just go with it. Yeah. So, but I have to say, if this book wasn't something that I was doing for the group, for our podcast, I probably would have put it down. I'm not going to lie. I got to be real honest. I don't know. I'm not sure I would have finished it, but of course, like with all book club type situations, you have to finish it. You just have to. So in the end, I did. And I think I was glad that I did when it was just all said and done. But I'm not sure I would have made it to the 50% mark if I was just choosing to read this on my own.
Same for me. I kept falling asleep. And, if I didn't have to read it for this, I would have just fallen asleep and never picked it up again.
I really wanted to watch the TV show, and I really wanted to reread it before then. So I think I would have kept going. But I was a little disappointed on the reread.
Yeah. Are there any more book topics we should talk about before we fully gung-ho switch gears and talk about the TV show?
No. It was disappointing.
Well, let's rate the book. Let's isolate that book rating before we talk about the show. So, let's go with you first, Nicola, since this was your pick. How did you rate the book the second time around?
The second time around, I'm going to give it a 3. I think there's a lot to be enjoyed. There's a lot to like about it, but you do have to enjoy that British humor. You do have to be okay with like a lot of characters and a lot of sort of chaos. And what was it? Almost 30 years ago now. I looked it up. So the publication date was 90. So we're at 29 years. 29 years ago, I would have given it a 4.5 or a 5, but it doesn't totally hold up for me. And so it's a 3.
Okay. Casey, how about you?
I'm giving it a 2 stars just because I can appreciate the story and I know it was well written, but I slept through most of it. I barely finished it. Don't really like most of the characters. Didn't like the fact that there's not really any development. I don't think that's a double negative. And the ending just felt so anticlimactic and lame, and I was like, that's it. So, 2 stars.
Okay. I would agree with your rating. I also gave it a 2. I really wish I could be more positive about it. I mean, after hearing so many good things, it just fell flat for me on the humor. The story was slow. The pacing was slow. The narrator did a good job overall, but he wasn't spectacular enough to pull me out of the boredom I felt when I was going through the audiobook. But like you, I mean, I wanted to love this because I have read Neil Gaiman before and I have enjoyed him before. So I really feel bad knowing that I am in the clear, me and Casey are both in the clear minority as far as people how they feel about this title. So it is what it is. You win some, you lose some. And for me, it was a loss. So 2 out of 5.
I haven't actually read anything else by Neil Gaiman. I did read one of the Discworld books by Terry Pratchett, and I think that the humor is very much his humor in that. So you guys might want to avoid those if this is totally
noted.
Yeah, no problem. It's fine. Okay, so we're going to switch gears here completely, and we're going to talk about the TV show. And obviously, we're probably going to draw back to the book as we talk about some of the differences. But immediately, when it comes to the TV show, when the very first episode came on and how it started with the little intro, I instantly liked it. I'm like, I think I'm going to like it. I'm like, wow, it's so different. It's vibrant and pretty to look at. And I don't know.
David Tennant.
Huh?
I could watch.
I said, and David Tennant.
Yeah. And so my first impression of the very first episode of the first 15 minutes was, I'm like, okay, I'm about this life. I can do it. How did you guys feel like when you first started watching the first episode?
Same. It was more upbeat. It was colorful. There was life in these boring words. And it was very, like, I was recognizing the lines. I was like, I know I kind of read this as I was falling asleep. I recognize it. And I was like, it's so much better because I don't feel like I'm about to fall asleep in the next 10 seconds. And it's, like you said, it's vibrant and colorful and there was more life in it.
I think the show really brought out the relationship between Aziraphale and Crowley a lot more than it was in the book. In the book, way more
definitely.
About all the other side characters and other things going on. And I think the chemistry between those two actors carried it in a really wonderful way. And I don't know if you guys have seen all of the shipping going on online with these two characters, but there's the rest of the viewers are really feeling that chemistry too. So I think that's what made it so amazing. And the cinematography was great. Like, I watched it with my 14-year-old daughter, and she's like, "Man, these special effects are lame. I mean, look at his red eyes. That's just so lame." I'm like, okay, but it's not a story that's about the special effects, right? So I guess it depends on who you're comparing it to. I think looking for that character development, it was there in the TV show, and it was less there in the...
Definitely.
Well, okay, to be frank, I thought it was very good how it looked, and I thought even the, what do you call it, the graphics or the work that they did, that the fake stuff, CG work, was actually good for Amazon standards. Because, not trying to shit on Amazon, but I've tried a couple of different Amazon originals, and they've not really succeeded as far as like something that looks like spectacular. All their stuff is kind of muted and boring. So this was something really out of the box for Amazon. Like, if you compare it to maybe some Netflix original movies and stuff, okay, I can see what you're saying. But for Amazon, this was a really good showing, because Amazon's pretty dull.
They stick more to dramas without a lot of expensive effects work.
Right. Exactly.
I thought the scene where the I can never remember the number, but the road, this beltway around London was on fire, and he drives through it and his car's on fire. I thought that was just an amazing scene. I loved that. I loved it in the book, and I loved it even more on the show.
Oh, it was definitely better in the show, and the graphics, and that was a great scene.
He didn't seem like he was concentrating as hard as I thought he should, because in the book they made it sound like he was concentrating so hard to keep it all together.
No,
and in the show, he's kind of like, he's fine. It's fine. He's rolling down the window and having a conversation. But yeah, I just thought he would be like sweating and shaking and stuff, trying to keep everything together, and he wasn't. I'm like, oh, okay.
It didn't really come out in the TV show that he had to expend effort to keep the car moving, right? So that was explained in the book, but there was no way to really explain that in the show without having God say it,
Yeah, which, I mean, would have been
she kind of said something about his imagination.
Yes, she did. She said he has a really good imagination. So all you have to do is imagine it will happen, I guess.
And be a demon.
Yeah, and be a demon. And that small thing.
Otherwise, that small thing. Otherwise, you can drive through fire. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, I did like that scene. It was, I liked the Four Horsemen in the show. I really was surprised to see some of the the actors that they picked. Like, what's the lady's name who was playing, who was she? She was War. Muriel Enos, I think. I'd seen her in some other things like The Catch on ABC and The Calling. I think it was. I really like her from other stuff. I was like, oh, she's in this, fabulous. And of course, some of the secondary characters were kind of cool to see. So I think it was cast really well overall.
I agree. I thought, from a secondary perspective, I think all the leads were sort of white British folk, but the secondary cast was really diverse. They had, different nationalities and different races playing a lot of different roles. And the Four Horsemen is a good example, right?
Yeah, like Famine, like the guy, Yusuf Gatewood. For those of you that watch like the originals and Vampire Diaries, you know him from that mostly. I'm like, oh my God, he's the witch in those shows. I'm like, he's in this? Oh, that's awesome. I love seeing him on there.
Of course, we don't know what Death was, because we never saw his face. He just had a void, kind of.
I did look it up, and it's played by Brian Cox, and I think you would recognize him if you looked him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very familiar. He's been in a bunch of stuff like X-Men, and just he's got a familiar face, but in the show you can't tell it's him because his costume or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like the Four Horsemen a lot, and my daughter was delighted with the it changing it over to motorcycles versus horses. She thought that was she just really got a good giggle out of that.
Yeah, I liked it. I even liked.
I was kind of disappointed
with what
that they cut out the other Four Horsemen.
Oh,
yeah, they left that out.
The four guys from the diner.
They also left out all the weird stuff about fish falling on the highway or whatever it was.
Oh, that was
I mean, it was very silly. It was very slapsticky. I don't know if it was a little bit of an homage to Douglas Adams, who talked about "So Long and Thanks for All the Fish" was like his last book. But yeah, it was weird in the book, but kind of funny, and the dialogue that the police and other people that were around it were having was pretty funny. But I could see if they had a limited CG budget that would be a good thing to leave out. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just another Kraken thing in the book where I was like, "Oh, it's important," and then it wasn't important.
You have high standards, Casey.
I do. They talk about it twice, and I want to know more. My standards are just too high.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, the show was easy to watch. It was only, I think, 6 episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that it was nice bite-sized pieces. It was like about an hour each about. And I feel like they covered the book. The adaptation was really well done. And Neil Gaiman was like really about being fully into this to make sure that it translated well to the screen. And I think
Didn't he write it?
I'm not sure. Let me take a quick look.
I know he's a producer, and I know I saw written by credits for him at least twice. I wasn't fully paying attention to that, but I know like he was super involved in it.
He was.
And like you're saying,
I saw a YouTube video where he was talking about, you know, kind of his involvement in it. I don't remember him saying writer, but he was saying that, you know, because obviously Terry Pratchett is no longer here. He was saying that, you know, he died, if you didn't know. But that he was saying it was really important to him that they get it right. So he was really invested in bringing it to the screen in a way that his friend would have enjoyed and been liked. So
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked how it was condensed and they didn't do all the jumping around in the middle of the stuff. Like episode 1 was wholly and completely about the baby swap. And then episode 2 is, all right, well, let's show the backstories of these other characters instead of throwing this in the middle of the baby swap like they did in the book. So I really appreciated that. And I thought that was a much better flow.
Yeah, even I think it was episode 3 where they kind of showed us Crowley and Aziraphale like throughout time. It was like that whole first part before the credits even rolled. We saw them from way back all the way, you know, to now. That was kind of cool.
I definitely loved getting that history, and that really built up their relationship in a way that you didn't see it in the book.
Yeah.
Because those were like kind of talked about in one-liners and snippets and like, oh, remember that time I owe you lunch for Paris or whatever. Like it was mentioned like that, but actually seeing them and watching them interact and be together, it really built that up. So I understand all the shippers and like, yes.
And saving each other. They were always like getting each other out of a tight spot.
And saving each other, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like when he got him the holy water, he's like, you said you wouldn't get it. He's like, yeah, well... It's like, you know, it's safer for me to give this to you than what you're about to do. So here.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say the scene where David Tennant was just sobbing in a bar. And he's like, my best friend is gone. Yeah. That broke my heart. And I was like, it's true love right there, you guys. It's true love.
Oh.
Yeah, I could watch angry David Tennant all day long.
Angry or sad or happy or crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but angry I think is his forte, I gotta say.
Oh, definitely.
And oblivious in, like, I don't know, Michael Sheen really plays that Angel's side really well. It's like he's so,
he does.
like, I don't know, like he just can't understand why, why would I do that? That's like a lie. I don't want to lie. Like, that's your job. I'm so, it's like, oh God.
He's very
Here we go.
sweet.
It's so
And,
funny.
He's good.
He tackles the big questions. Like, can you be a good person and never do anything, never tell a lie or never,
or wrong.
Do a small bad thing for a greater good, right? Like trying to kill an 11-year-old boy. Like,
or give away the flaming sword. That kept coming up. Like, where's the sword? And I'm like, why are you asking what the sword is? God already knows what he did with the sword. Why is everyone asking him about this stupid sword? It's gone. Like,
because they don't talk to God.
Yeah, clearly they don't.
Yeah.
They're on their own agenda.
I thought John Hamm was brilliant as his irritating boss,
He was.
And I think there's a little dig in there about him being American, and the good guys being British and the annoying people being American. I think that's a little British dig for us.
Yes. I really like the fact that they brought in more angels and demons in the heaven-hell fight into the TV show and really played that up, and how, like, from the start, the angels were like, oh yeah, no, we want this fight. We want this to happen. Don't do anything that would stop this from happening. Because the way it was in the book, it was so like, oh, that's an afterthought near the end of the book.
Yeah, the point is not to avoid the war, it's to win the war.
Although avoiding it makes complete sense to me and most of us.
Me too. But what do we know? We're only humans.
Yeah.
So did you guys have different favorite characters in the TV show versus the book, or were they the same?
I actually really liked, what's the lady's name who was the descendant of Agnes Nutter? What's her name?
Anathema.
Oh,
Anathema. I really liked her. I liked her character.
I agree. I liked her better in the show.
She was better in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, better in the show.
Yes, agreed. I really liked her. I don't know. The kids were fine. I didn't like them more or less. But I gotta say, I love that one of the kids was, a black little girl. She was so cute. I liked it.
Yeah, the kids were a little bit different. The scene at the end, like in the book, that he never did anything that scared the kids, I don't think. At least not like he did in the show, right? Where he wouldn't let them go and he wouldn't let them talk. And I don't remember that from the book. He was scarier to the little gang in the show than he was in the book.
Did you guys pick this up? Because this has to do with him being kind of like torturing his friends.
Right.
So after the whole thing went down, it seemed like people kind of forgot what happens, most of them.
Yeah.
Or they didn't really have a clear understanding. Because I'm like, why? I would not come around being like, hey, Adam, let's play. I'm like, bitch, get away from me. Like, okay. So they did forget. I'm like, I thought they seemed like they did. I'm like, well, that's unfortunate. But
it was just like a hazy recollection of like something happened, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
I like how they paired off the kids with the Four Horsemen. I thought that was a great addition to the book.
Didn't they do that in the book?
I don't think so.
I don't remember that, them facing off.
Destroy the Horsemen like that. I don't remember what happened to the Horsemen. They just kind of went away when it all started going right. Like...
Yeah, it seemed like when Adam made his choice or something, when he chose humanity, I think the Horsemen just went away. Like, it wasn't a standoff.
They kind of faded out, yeah.
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 I like that War was a woman.
And
that was true in the book.
I appreciate that she wasn't sexualized in the TV show the way she was in the book.
Yeah.
Because that just kept rubbing me wrong.
Okay, yeah.
In the book.
I could see that, too. Although she kind of... gets her own back. I mean, whenever anybody kind of gave her that side eye, they ended up dead. But
oh yeah, yeah. No, it was much better in the TV show, but in the book, it was just one of those things. It was like, this is written by a man, like back in the 80s.
Yeah,
and can we just not?
Like, can we just not do this? Thanks.
Can we just not? I'm going to skip to the next page, next section, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah. So I really appreciated that she wasn't that way in the TV show.
Oh yeah, she was badass. She was like, she had people fighting, and I was like, before you know it, they're
killing
and killing. Yeah. Like, well, that's what war's supposed to do, right? Do stuff to incite war. So, but that was crazy. Like when they were gonna just let everyone's missiles go, like they just totally used technology to hack everybody's missiles.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't even do anything about it. So, like, what's happening?
Nope.
Like, ugh. I kind of thought that they would try to influence people to do stuff versus just them doing it. That
I think they had to condense it just a little bit for the show because I feel like they said that they were going to influence people in the book, but again, I was half asleep, so don't quote me on what I'm remembering.
It went down pretty much the same in the show as it did in the books. They got into the communication systems and they just started a war basically with everybody. There was that scene in I think it was the Russian submarine, and they were like, "So who are we fighting?" And the guy's like, "Everybody." So I think that and that was important to the plot because Newt fixed it by breaking all the computers,
right.
which is, technologically speaking, ridiculous. But then the whole thing is ridiculous, so it's fine.
Yeah, an IT guy that he wants to be an IT guy that can't fix anything. He just breaks everything.
I mean, all those computers would do nothing in the scheme of things today. Maybe it would have. But yeah,
it would just stop their computer, right? Not the entire world.
I mean, they were magically. Right.
Don't question it.
They were kind of like magically infected, right? So like pollution kind of blew magic into the system. So the fact that they're magically shut down and everybody forgot that they were supposed to be at war checks out, right? In the world building. It's a little hand wavy, but this whole thing is, Deus Ex Machina, so or Machina.
With that said, I did find myself chuckling while watching the show.
Oh, that's good.
Just a little bit.
I definitely laughed more. Yeah.
More than the book. Like, the book was like deadpan, nothing. I'm like, But the show, I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny. Or, just a little chuckle. Nothing no full belly laughs or anything like that going on.
It's very dry. And I agree with you. It's not something that's going to make you just double over, but it's irony and dry humor and
British humor.
Well, the one good thing that I can appreciate about Amazon is so far it seems like this is the end, and that is what it should be. There is one thing that I hate more than anything is when people get greedy and they try to milk something that is intended to be a limited run, and they're like, let's throw another season in because people loved it. It doesn't look like they're doing that, and I'm grateful.
Tamara, you really shouldn't Google Good Omens season 2 then.
They made a hint, though, in the show.
No! Okay, because in my little app, I'm sorry, I just blared that out. In my app, it said that it ended. And I'm like, so I didn't bother looking anything up because it said it ended. And I'm like, oh, yay, it ended. But now you're saying it's not. Oh, God. Damn. Okay, they're about to do some bullshit that HBO did with Big Little Lies. And the second season was totally irrelevant and not important, and it was not as good as the first season. Stop while you're ahead. Stop trying to be greedy. You've told the story.
So at the end of the last episode, I think it was... They said something like, oh, yeah, there's going to be another, or the big one is going to be the fight of us against them,
I caught
the
that,
humans.
But I thought that they were just saying that and let us leave our own device, leave that to our own imaginations. I did hear that, but I'm not thinking, oh, that's literally a season 2.
I heard that and I went, oh, shit, season 2 is coming.
I want to know right now. Tell me if you're going to watch a season 2. I'm not. I'm finished. The story's done.
I will watch it because I will. I love the show. I love the characters. They have this great chemistry. And I'm done with the book. Like, I'm happy that the book is over. If they write a second book, I will not read another book.
I guarantee you're going to be disappointed. It never delivers like the first season does because they're making up stuff without any source material. It's never going to be.
It's Neil Gaiman.
I don't care.
If he's writing it, it's going to be.
But
his
we just
brain.
talked about how most of this book was Terry Pratchett.
That's not what I said. I said I think the humor is Pratchett's humor.
Well, okay. I can see the humor is Pratchett's humor, but still.
It's not for sure, just so you guys know, it's not for sure, but there's a whole lot of articles about speculating about it. So there is not.
I hope there's not.
I know you do.
I hope there's not. Because, okay, so like I watch American Gods, right? American Gods is Neil Gaiman's thing all the way. And the show is good, but it's like one of these shows where you really don't be doing anything else. Nothing. You sit there and you watch that show. You're not checking your phone. You're not even eating dinner because you'll miss something and you'll get confused. So you're all in 100%. A lot's going on. It's very vivid, just like this. That's how I can tell this definitely had his touch, the way it looks. But I can't imagine this show will get very, very dark. If it's Neil Gaiman, even more dark, with no comedic humor at all. I feel like if they do maybe they might be able to keep it up, maybe. But, just for me watching people do season 2s based on a book that is done in one season, it never works out. It never does.
Well, it's not for sure.
I mean, I'd be open to seeing what they do if Neil Gaiman does it. Because I feel like he would pay homage to the characters because they're his. But again, like, I would not read another book. I would be open to a show. If it sucked, I could easily just turn it off and walk away.
If they're going to put David Tennant up on the screen, I'll probably watch it.
I mean, there's no lie in that sentence. There's no lie.
Honestly, that's how you draw people. Like when you have people who really like a certain actor or actress, when you put them in these shows, you draw people that would probably not normally watch the show because they like everything they do. So yeah, maybe I'll be once again, I'm digging my feet in.
If there's a season 2, I'll watch it and tell you to avoid it if it's really bad.
Okay, perfect. Perfection. I wish someone had done that for me with Big Little Lies, but instead I watched that whole stupid thing. It's awful. Anyway. I'm not even trying. I'm not.
You know what you like. You know what you like. You know how I do. And you're not afraid to say it. That's why we love you.
No. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I'll say one of the things I really loved that was in the show that was not in the book was the sort of the post-apocalypse trials that the two characters went through in heaven and hell, respectively. And I totally did not get what was happening. My daughter was like, "Oh my God, did you see what happened?" I was like, "No, I was playing a game and listening." She's like, rewind it and watch the scene again where they sort of switched bodies. I'm like, oh my God, that was amazing. And when you watching it the second time, it was 100% obvious. She's like, look at how they're sitting, and the character with Aziraphale's face was all sprawled and then the Crowley was sitting there very, with his knees together and his hands in his lap. And it was just like, oh yeah, now I see it. I totally did not see that coming. And I loved it.
Yeah, I would agree. First time through, I did the same thing because at the end, I'm like, wait, that wasn't the thing to choose your face. I'm like, that makes complete sense now. It's like, I get it. But yeah.
The scene where Crowley was in the bathtub splashing with the holy water. Oh my God, I love that so much.
And he's splashing it at the demons, and he's like
flicking it at the other demons.
He's like, "Hey, magic me a towel!" Like what?
I heard Michael magic me a bath towel.
Like, oh my gosh! But then I guess it makes sense because even Aziraphale, quote unquote, he wasn't even like, I think he would have been trying to talk out of it instead of just walking into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did say something snotty, kind of prissy before he walked into it. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I thought when I watched those two trial scenes the first time and they both survived the trials, what I thought is that they had both started to become either more human or more like the other. Like, just like they said at the very end, Crowley has a nugget of good inside, and Aziraphale has enough of a bastard to be interesting or whatever. So I thought that was why they were able to survive the trial. And I was completely taken by surprise when I found out that they had sort of switched bodies, and of course it wasn't in the book either. So I thought that was a brilliant. I don't know if we'd call it an epilogue, but additional scene.
Mm-hmm.
I love that a lot.
Yeah, that was fun. And I think the whole thing about, not neither one of them being all good or all bad, I'm like, oh, that's just like life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody's
Mm-hmm.
all good or all bad. So it's interesting to see how two polar opposites can become friends, just like in real life.
I mean, the whole theme of the story is about free will and choosing your own adventure, so to speak. So
Eating the apple.
yeah,
They kind of bash that over your head a few times.
totally. More so in the show
Mm-hmm.
than in the book. I thought that final scene with Adam talking.
He
about
did that in the book. I
Did
remember
he?
that because I wanted to throw the book away and be like, "Are you kidding me?"
Aw.
That's the one thing I do remember because I was like, "I'm just so over the stupid apple symbolism."
Yeah, I just really remember the dog running out of the gate in the book, and then he did the same thing in the show. I'm like, oh gosh. I kept waiting for the dog to run out so he could chase him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I did miss the. There was three or four scenes that were inside the Hellhound's perspective in the book that were adorable, and I missed that in the show. Where like the dog was becoming less, demonic. He was like, I really like chasing squirrels. I'm not going to get to do that if I go back.
They kind of had that in one of the scenes where the dog was playing with the cat and the cat just smacked it down and it ran away crying. So they kind of...
Yeah, he had little red eyes, and the cat was like, forget you.
Oh, yeah. But it wasn't as cute as the way they did it in the book, no.
Yeah, so I did miss that a little bit. I felt like the names in the book made it harder to follow, like naming somebody Anathema Device and naming somebody, Witchfinder Thou Shalt Not Commit Adultery. I was like, it's kind of a slog. It was easier to deal with that in the show than reading all those words every time the character's name came up,
Which they had to. I mean, okay, so as a watcher of the show and a reader of the book, those things would connect with me because I had seen them before.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying to grab audience that may not have read the book, that kind of stuff would turn people off, I think. So they did right to kind of, I think, clean it up or tighten it up.
Minimize it a little bit. There was a point where they showed it in writing that, Newt's ancestor's actual name was Thou Shalt Not Commit It, because it would have been confusing to just only hear it spoken. So I don't know if that was hard in the audiobook too, but it was a little bit confusing. I don't know, it was just a lot to go through in the text, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Now, anything that is in the text, I mean, they just said it all together. So I just thought that it was like not anything separate. So
Okay.
if that makes sense. So just like with the, annotations or whatever, they just said it. So so they would say that. And then eventually, I gotta be honest, I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then eventually I'm like, oh, they're like making a side note, like the way we would speak it. And I'm like, well, maybe that's how I'm interpreting it because I'm speaking it, not seeing it. And then later when I saw it in the book, I'm like, oh, that makes sense now. I'm like, why do they keep saying that? Why they keep saying footnote? I'm like, what are you saying? I'm like, is that the British version for side note or, FYI or something? I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then when I saw the book, I'm like, oh, it is literally a footnote.
Yeah, there's some things that are hard to do in audio. But at least you had the footnotes.
At least you got the footnotes. Yeah, I was about to say. I didn't even get them in my ebook.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we all liked the show. That's a good thing.
I really liked it. So I thought that the things that were added to it made it a lot better. Like, I really loved the things that were in the show that were not in the book. And I thought that the stuff they left out made sense to leave out for the most part. And they captured a lot of it. They really did. I'm going to confess something to you guys, and Casey's probably going to laugh her ass off. But in the book, after reading it twice, I did not get that Adam was making all those weird things happen because he believed them. I thought that they were just true and he found out about them, I guess. Or I was reading through it too fast to make that connection. And then in the show where it shows him sort of dreaming about it and things manifesting from that, I was like, oh.
Oh, you didn't get that? I thought he was just making shit up and it was happening.
It took me a little while to do it, but then, like, he was telling his friends, yeah, no, this is true, I read it. And I'm like, where the fuck did you read that?
I know. I told you were going to laugh at me.
Yeah. No, I was a little slow on the uptake, but I eventually caught that. So, no, I won't laugh my ass off at you. I'll just giggle a little bit.
I will skim over things that are not penetrating. I'll just keep on. I'll just roll with it, and then sometimes the connection gets made and sometimes it doesn't.
All right, so I don't know, guys. We're coming up on an hour, or we're past the hour a little bit. Do you think there's anything else we should discuss before we wrap this up?
I think we've hit the high notes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would love to know for you guys in the live chat, or if you're listening on your different podcatchers later on, tell me what you thought of the show. Did you like the show better than the book, like me and Casey and Nicola actually, I think, did? Or did you prefer the book, and why? I want to know that, and let us know if you are interested in us doing something like this again when we have a little lull in books. I would also like to know that as well. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next month. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's book chat episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcast and leave a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. Most importantly, you can share this podcast with friends and family that enjoy all things bookish, including author interviews. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.